This is the part 2 of dynamic TypeScript typings. Today in this video we will learn functions and class constructor overloadings. If you didn't watch the part 1 of dynamic TypeScript typings, then you should surely watch it before you watch this one, because it will give you a good knowledge about some daily implementation in TypeScript. I will leave a link in the description below so that you can check it out. Okay, let's get started. Let us create a function called add, which accepts two arguments of type any and returns the data of type any. Later, we will define the overloads of this function. Let us call this function and see the return type, which obviously is any. Now let's define the overrides for this function. We will define two overrides. The first override will accept two arguments of type string and return a concatenation of the string. We need to make sure that the argument of the actual function definition accepts each argument of data of type any, else it will conflict with the overrides and throw an error. The second override will accept two arguments of type number and return an addition of type number. We also need to make sure that we assign a return type for each override. Let's call the same function again by passing arguments of type string and see the output type. The output type will be a string according to our override. And the first call that we made will have a return type of number. Let's do the same thing with an arrow function. The tricky part of an arrow function overloading is that we have to define a separate TypeScript type for the overload definition. We will define the same overloads for this function. Now we need to assign the overload type for the add_to variable. TypeScript will force us to call the function with a valid signature due to the overrides we defined. If we check the output type, we can see it works fine. Now let's move to the constructor overloads and see how we can implement overloads for a class. First, we need to create a class called myDate with an empty constructor inside it. Now we will define all the overloads of the constructor. First, constructor overload will accept no arguments so that we can initialize the class without passing any arguments to it. The second constructor will accept one parameter of type date instance. The third constructor will accept three parameters year, month, date of type number. Now in the main constructor, we will be able to access the parameters in the following way. The first parameter p1 will be an optional parameter of type date instance or a number. We would need a type guard in order to validate the parameter p1 in the runtime. The second parameter p2 will be an optional parameter of type number, and similarly the p3. Let's try to instantiate the class with different inputs and see if our overloads are working fine. As we can see, our overloads are working completely fine. That's it for today's video. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns in the comment section. Have a good day.